okay, yeah, why have I spent the past 12 years, about 12 years of my life working on Project Salomé? Good question. I guess I would have to start way back when I was an opera student at the Manhattan School of Music in New York, and I had a wonderful, wonderful old music history professor. And his two great passions were Richard Wagner and Richard Strauss, the two great Richards. And basically I fell in love with both of them. And during the course of his music history classes, I became acquainted with the opera Salome. And I was just as fascinated as any other opera goer was. But basically the real obsession didn't start until a particular recording came out. And this particular recording and Hildegard Behrens' performance was so compelling and so driven. It's to this day, it's the best recording of Salome. I became obsessed with this recording. I listened to it day and night when I could. And in my quiet moments, in my own little living room, I would put on candles and I would put on a silk kimono and I would do my own little dramatic performance of that final scene. That's how over the top I was with this recording. And in all this fascination, something just niggled at the back of my mind. And it took a while for it to take shape. And it basically was that I felt that there was something terribly, terribly wrong with what happens to this young girl, with the fact that all she really did was fall in love, become infatuated and enamored. And I began to feel that I had to do something to redeem this young girl of this terrible image that she had been saddled with for the past 2 millennia. Now, I simply, the desire was there, but I had absolutely no clue in what form, what shape or form I was going to do this in. And that took almost 2.5 decades for me to come up with a way of, or a form in which I thought, okay, this is how I see, this is what I would see our Salome, or my Salome, becoming. Now, when Sharlie and I started writing the script for Salome, we were basically flying by the seat of our pants. Neither one of us, Sharlie had written a script with a German writer-producer who wanted to work with her. I had never. I was actually looking for someone to write the script to Jade of Arc with when Sharlie and I met at a friend's birthday party. We ended up sitting together on our friend Betsy's piano bench with plates of food and the usual conversation, what do you do, what do you do? and when Sharlie said, well, she was on stage, she was in the original Hamburg cast of Cats, she's a performer, singer, a dancer, but she wanted to leave the stage because she wanted to write. And when I heard that she'd written a screenplay, I was like immediately, so we got together and we did write that script to Jade of Arc. And when we started to develop that plot, I just all of a sudden realized the Salome that I wanted to do was a film. The way I saw Salome would be as a film, as a motion picture. And at that point, I asked Sharlie, well, look, this is something I've really always wanted to do. Would you want to do it with me? And she said yes. And so at the end of 2001, we started to develop a concept for a screenplay of Salome. And at the beginning, it was to be, we had thought of it in terms of Vietnam War time, and Herod was an armaments manufacturer, and Salome was his stepdaughter, was a flower power, a flower child. And so we played with that for a bit, and then realized that that would actually kind of get old and dated very quickly, and it would lose the mythical quality that I wanted Salome to have and to retain. And so at that point we decided to set it in the future. But that was, it was the first even thought or attempt at writing a screenplay for me. And both of us are actually, we're avid readers, but we read novels and not screenplays. So, so basically, neither one of us had ever taken a course or done anything of the sort. We were really literally flying by the seat of our pants. At the same time that we started working on this, the first Lord of the Rings film came out. Going back to that recording coming out in 1977-78, and my just being blown away by that. At the same time, that was when I first read Lord of the Rings, and was totally blown away by that. So at that point in my life, I had these two obsessions: Salome, the opera, and Lord of the Rings. And the first Lord of the Rings film came out, and I was very, very skeptical because I'd seen that half-animated version in 1977, and it was terrible. And I was totally disappointed after having read the books and been so enthused. It was just a bust. So I was very, very skeptical, but I went to see it just before Christmas in 2001, and again, I was just totally over the moon, totally blown away. And I kept going back to see it over and over again, and it was the first time I'd ever really done that with a movie. And when I was sitting in the theater for about the sixth or seventh time, watching the scene with Galadriel and Frodo and Lothlorien, I was looking at this beautiful young man with these eyes, these incredibly expressive blue eyes, and I thought, he's our prophet Elijah. He is our prophet. And he, and I thought, yes. So I went home after the film, and I called Sharlie up and I said, I know who our prophet's going to be. And she says, who? And I said, Elijah Wood. And she said, yes. So we began writing the script Salome with Elijah Wood as our role model for the prophet. And having him in mind, one evening I sat there and thought, yes, our prophet is not John the Baptist. Our prophet is the Old Testament prophet Elijah. Yeah, and so we just kind of got on with it somehow until we got to the end. And what happened was that as we were approaching the end and realized, well, it's foreseeable that we're going to finish this. It was 2003, and it was announced that the world premiere of Return of the King was going to be held in Wellington. Now, both Sharlie and I had become great fans of the movie, but I did something that I'd never done before. I joined the official Lord of the Rings fan club, which meant that there were message boards, and I got to know people through the message boards. But we also got every 2 months a really beautiful magazine, and the impression that one got from that was that everything was so open, and people were so accessible, and it was just such a joyous process. And I thought to myself, when I heard that this was happening in Wellington, I thought, okay, we're going to be finished with the screenplay. I am going to go to New Zealand. I'm going to go to Wellington for that premiere in the hope of being able to meet some of the production people, to give the script to people. I mean, it's just incredibly, incredibly naive. But nevertheless, in July, I bought a ticket to Wellington, and on November 24th, I got on a plane with several scripts and a bunch of synopses in my backpack. And I flew from Hamburg to London, from London to Los Angeles, where I met two ladies who I knew from the message boards. And so we were sitting and talking, and I was telling them all about Salome, and I was showing them, and because the two of them were also avid Elijah Wood fans, although they were middle-aged ladies like me. We all found him absolutely adorable. Yeah. Anyway, the flight was finally called, and we were standing on line waiting, and I turned around, and 10 feet away from me was Elijah Wood. Well, I started shaking like a leaf, like some, teenager for Robert Pattinson or whatever. I was totally a dither. But I managed to collect myself, and I walked up to him and I talked to him, and I told him about our script. I thanked him for his wonderful performance and how much we loved it, and I told him that this friend of mine and I had written a script, and that he had inspired the lead male role, and he was absolutely charming. He was delightful, and I actually opened my backpack, took out a script and handed it to him, and he looked at it, he said, wow, this is amazing. And so we walked in through the gate together, chatting away, and the two ladies were still standing there. So we had a lovely chat with him. We took some photos, and then of course he went to first class and we went to ours, but I was glowing like a 1,000-watt bulb. Even before I got into Wellington, there I was. So so that was a great thing to fly over there with. And when I got to Wellington, it turns out that the lady who I homestayed with worked at Massey University, and the lady who was organizing that exhibition of Viggo Mortensen's was her boss. So she got me a ticket to that exhibition and that opening, and I went there, and everybody was there, and I actually walked up to Barry Osborne, who was one of the executive producers, and thanked him for these wonderful films that I love so much, and then I smiled at him very charmingly and said, and by the way, I have a screenplay. And this very charming gentleman chuckled amiably and actually gave me his contact. And so, as a result of that journey, I actually have kept the contact with Barry Osborne and with Richard Taylor over these past 9 years. And what happened during that trip is that I took a little workshop with someone here about getting your work out there, and he directed me to a publisher, a New Zealand publisher, who he said had to do with screenplays. Well, the gentleman said that's not quite correct information. We're a book publisher, but we do sometimes help our authors to get film deals, and then he suggested that we write the novel. Now, this was something that hadn't occurred to me, but it had occurred to Sharlie. And when I got back from New Zealand, she basically, I called her up and, before I had even said anything about this, she basically said to me, look, while you were away, I was thinking we should write the novel. And between 2004 and, since then, we have been going back and forth between the novel and the screenplay. One of the things that we did is that I took the advice of a lady here in Wellington who works with transmedia, multimedia, and have gotten together not only the cover illustrations for the book, but also another 5 illustrations, so that we have 7 illustrations that are now going into not only a book trailer, but also a promo trailer for the screenplay. And these illustrations are done by an Australian artist by the name of Matt Donaghey, who did just a spectacular job. So, so now we had our cover, and now the revisions were being done, and I'd found an editor and a proofreader, and this was all building up. It was really getting very exciting. We were going to put it on Amazon through CreateSpace and on Kindle, et cetera, and finally on the day that the book, the actual book, went up on Amazon, on that day I was diagnosed for breast cancer. And it was such a total shock. it was like, what? It just came so out of the blue. And I just thought, okay, well, there are two ways that you can look at this. You can either say, well, my book finally came out and now this terrible thing happened. Or I could say, well, this not so great thing has happened, but we finally got our book out there. Where do we go from here? One of the reasons why this is so important to me is because our main target audience is young women. I feel that young women today have the most critical role to play in our society. Now, if you go back to Oscar Wilde's time, in Victorian times, everything looked very pristine on the outside, but behind closed doors, terrible things were happening. And, and the abuse of young girls and the abuse of children as a whole is a theme for that time and a theme for me, a very personal theme. And, and building on this was why I had wanted to give Salome back her innocence. This was the absolute motivating factor for me. That I wanted to give her back what she was really supposed to be. What her name says she is the peaceable one, the bringer of peace. That innocent young girl who falls in love as young girls do. And I wanted to give her a story where that love and that love story would have the beauty and the innocence of the biblical Song of Songs. And I also wanted to make her a role model for young women, a proactive, socially conscious young woman who was capable of going out there, getting her hands dirty, and being there for the people. She, as a princess in our story, she is there for the people. She is motivated by a desire to do something in this world, to do something about the human condition. And there are examples of young women like this in the world today. One of them is this young Pakistani girl, Malala Yousafzai, who was nearly assassinated by the Taliban because she said that young girls need to be educated. And she spoke on her 16th birthday at the UN Youth Assembly, and spoke of the goals that she has and what she would like to see happen. And there was no hint of her wanting revenge on or vengeance on anyone for what had happened to her. This was totally out of the picture. But this is what she wants to do, something for young girls so that they will have another standing in this world. Another example is Angelina Jolie, who got up in front of the G8 and made a plea for rape in war zones being considered a crime against humanity. This is a woman who gets out there, who goes to places where it's probably dangerous for her to be, who stands up and stands out, and who uses who she is, the princess, who uses who she is to affect change in this world. And these are the examples of young women that I see. There's another young woman. Her name is on her website, Anita. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but she has gone on a campaign to make people aware of the image that young women have in video games. of of this hypersexed and and also the victimizing, and she was the subject of a cyber hate campaign on over the internet because of this. Incredible. She's 24, she's 26 years old, and she is standing up there and telling people this is not on. The way women are represented here, this is abusive, this is terrible. This has to change. So this is basically, for me, why it is so important for me to just keep going no matter what my own because I'm no longer that age, but I can, through my experience, through what I see, I can put something out there that that shows that there are young women out there who are willing to put themselves on the line, and that this is what young women, this is what I would like to see young women motivated to do, because they are the ones who really can change it.